Well, hello. Welcome back to Toy Thursday with Johnny Tiger. The date is November 3rd, 2022. In front of the camera, you are looking at one of the most badass housewives in comic book history. Now, I honestly tried to sit down and Google a list of most badass housewives in comic book history. And to my surprise, there were a list of the most badass women, the most sexual women, the most sexy women, all kind of different lists from comic book history. But there was no list for housewives. Like, yeah, it's kind of sad, isn't it? Like when we talk about action figures, when we talk about comic books, when we talk about superheroes, most of the women that they want to show you are women that look like they do nothing but either do martial art all day long or they do nothing but going to the gym all day long. Like women that have nothing to do other than train and then fight and train some more and then fight some more. A lot of these comic book females don't even have any kind of real personality, and a lot of them lack any kind of uh, uh, circumstances or daily lives that will fill out their days. I mean, at least, right? At least when we talk about Batman, right? What does Batman do? Batman, the he does his Batman saying, "Go fight criminal in the nighttime." But Batman is a playboy millionaire in the daytime. So in daytime, you can see him sitting in the office and doing his millionaire playboy thing. Same with Iron Man, right? Iron Man, in a uh, in the off time, he's being a superhero. He put on his Iron Man armor and he go fight criminals. But he's also a millionaire businessman, so he spent a lot of time doing other stuff, right? I can name a lot other Superman, right? You see a lot of Superman's daily interaction as a reporter. Spider-Man, same thing. When he's not being a Spider-Man, he's trying to survive being a student and being working Joe. The list go on and on for men, but for women, like okay, let's go back to Batman. What does Catwoman do? Like what does Catwoman even do when she's not being Catwoman? Most of us don't know. What does Poison Ivy do when she's not busy being the Poison Ivy? There again, most of us we don't know. We move on to superheroes. Like okay, let's go to a superhero team that actually have females. Like the X-Men. Let's look at Storm. What does she do? What does Storm do when she's not out there fighting uh, mutants? We don't really know. I mean, we see her train and learn how to fight. We see her uh, uh, do this or that, like going around the world solving problems for other people. But she doesn't really seem to have a life outside of being Storm of the X-Men. Uh, Same thing with Wonder Woman, right? Like Wonder Woman, everyone know Wonder Woman. Yeah, but what does she do when she's not being Wonder Woman? Well, at least that I can tell you. Wonder Woman, when she's not being Wonder Woman, she's either a teacher or she work at a museum, depending on which version you're looking at. So she does have a day job, but the fact remains, we very rarely see her not being Wonder Woman. We very rarely see her doing anything other than fighting crime or monsters. All this is my long-winded way to say that to find a list of actual like housewives that uh, really draw attention in comic book is actually a lot harder than I thought. However, due to my many years of comic book history and experience and geekiness, I was able to find one very badass housewife. This is Susan Storm, otherwise known as the Invisible Girl, but don't let her hear that because a few years ago they got it changed to Invisible Woman because they thought Invisible Girl made her sound too uh, uh, wimpy or weak or it was too demeaning. So they wanted to change her to Invisible Woman. So she is a member of the Fantastic Four. She's wife to Mr. Fantastic, aka Reed Richard. She's also sister to Johnny Storm, aka the Human Torch, and she is the Invisible Woman. Her superpower is she can turn herself and some people around her invisible, and her power of invisibility has been exaggerated and exaggerated some more. So now she's not only able to do the invisible thing, she can use her power to generate defensive shields that can survive things like nuclear warhead and stuff like that. It's kind of crazy. Um, I mean, to me that almost seemed like way too much of a stretch. Like, okay, I thought you're the invisible woman, so your ability should be you can turn things invisible, you can turn yourself invisible, right? So how's that stretch to I can create a force field strong enough to stop a nuclear attack, or I can hit people with my force field and throw them off their feet. I mean, yeah, now we're really stretching that invisible superpower. But be that as it may, it's a comic book, so we can't get too serious about it. And honestly, if her only power is invisibility, that would make her even more boring than she already is. Yeah, I'm standing here telling you how badass Invisible Woman is, and by the way, she's also a mother of two children. That's why she is definitely classified as a housewife, and she is one of the most badass housewives in Marvel history because, well, as I pointed out, she has the ability to not just defending herself, but shield others, shield her teammates from all kind of devastating attack. So she's very useful as far as being a part of the Fantastic Four and a superhero team. However, personally speaking, I don't really like the Invisible Girl or Invisible Woman because, okay, look, invisibility is a very visual thing, right? Like me as a blind person, her being able to turn herself invisible doesn't do anything for me. And other than her very intangible and very visual superpower, she got nothing going on for her. Like as far as I'm concerned, like her personality is almost non-existent, and a lot of the time in the comic book, she's either taking care of her children, worrying about her children, worrying about her brother, worrying about her husband, or being chased around by men who want to kidnap her and take her away to be their own wife. So she's like a lot of times she's that stereotypical woman, feminine role that people put women in. That she's always um, only valuable because she's either someone's mom, or she's someone's sister, or she's someone's wife, or she's someone's sexual fantasy. She has very little going for her other than that. So to me, Invisible Woman has always been a very boring character, and her action figure is even more so because how would you even convey the power of invisibility in action figure form? I mean, you can just sell me an empty box and tell me that's an invisible woman inside. Yeah, yeah, you can't feel her because she's invisible or intangible or whatever. But obviously, they can't do that. So they basically take a very normal, generic Marvel female body and uh, gave her interesting energy effect and call it a day. Okay, that symbolizes her power, and that's how. So it's not really the toy maker's fault because, yeah, when your power is invisibility, how would a toy company even do that? It's very hard for the toy company to recreate that. So I understand that. But that doesn't change the fact that for me, Invisible Woman has always been a very boring character and an even more boring action figure. So why am I showing her in the beginning of the video? Because today is National Housewife Day. What is National Housewife Day? Well, it is a day where we show appreciation to stay-at-home moms and housewives in our life, uh, and take them out for dinner and be nice to them because being a housewife, being a mom, it's hard work. It really is. Not that I would know, but I've uh, been friends with enough of them. I've seen enough of them relatives that do that, and I know it's hard work. So if you have that housewife in your life, this is the day to show them some appreciation, show them some love, take them out for a massage, treat them to dinner, and give them a nice day out. And please don't make this the only day of the year where you appreciate them. They need all the love they can get, right? Um, when did National Housewife Day start? Surprisingly enough, even Google couldn't tell me that. They don't. Google doesn't even know who started it. Uh, but it's enough to know that it's on November 3rd every year, and what we are supposed to do. There's nothing complicated about that. It's a day where you want to remember to appreciate the housewives in your life. So this is why we got Susan Storm here because, like I said, despite her being very boring, she is a housewife and she is one of the most badass housewives in the Marvel comic books. But because she is so boring, we're not going to dedicate an entire episode talking about her. We're going to bring in another much more interesting but a lot more disturbing character, a much more scary housewife. It was only a couple of days ago that it was Halloween, and because Halloween was not on a Toy Thursday, so I didn't get to show a horror figure this year. So this is like a double whammy. I get to show you a housewife, and she's also a perfect Halloween related character that is quite horrific. So brace yourself, we got something very disturbing coming up right now. First, let me tell you the little story of Bioshock. Now, those of you who know Bioshock, you're going to say that's not a that's not a short story. Bioshock is quite complicated. There's a lot going on. Yes, I know there's a lot going on. I listened to the audio drama. Yeah, did you guys know there's actually a dramatized version out there? I read a lot of the online material, but honestly, it's there's a lot of filler, a lot of padding material in there. Yes, it's cool to read everybody's diary and all that entry, but the real story of Bioshock, what happened there, can be told in a very abbreviated way. There's nothing too complicated about that. And because most of the audience, I imagine, will be people who don't know about Bioshock, so I don't want to go into all the tedious details about who's who and who did what and all that stuff. So, quickly now, Bioshock. Somewhere around 1940, I believe, some 1930 maybe even, um, in a fictitious universe, a bunch of people got tired of all the bickering and war and all that nonsense that's going on in society. So among them were some of the very brilliant adventurers and scientists and all that stuff, all those smart, super smart people. So they decided, well, since we don't want to play with other people anymore, we don't like other people anymore, we're just going to take everyone in our family and everyone we love, and we're going to go create a new city under the ocean, at the bottom of the sea. We're going to build the Garden of Eden, the new Avalon, and this city is going to be for us only. It's like a very exclusive club. Only people who are wealthy and rich and useful and smart were allowed to sign on to move to this underwater city. The city's name was Rapture, and Rapture was like paradise. At least they planned it to be like paradise. However, very soon, even those people in Rapture started to get bored and restless, and some of them wanted to leave, some of them wanted to take over the city, want to try to rule the city. There's a lot of infighting, backstabbing, political, which means the kind of things that they ran away from the rest of the population to get away from, they brought it with them to their new paradise. And so there were these new drugs that were being invented uh, that can give people various abilities. Uh, so imagine like the fentanyls and the cocaine and the marijuana and the LSD that we know in our world. In Rapture, there's these drugs that can give you similar high and make you high and dizzy and feel good, but these drugs can also give you some superhuman abilities, like the drugs that can make you super fast, and the drugs that make you super strong, and then so on so on. Some of them, like super steroids, can make you grow big muscles, and some of them can give you bigger breasts and increase sexual function, etc., etc. People who got addicted to using these drugs were known as splicers because basically it's like you're splicing your DNA, you're splicing your gene to improve your body in some ways. That's what these drugs were supposed to do. And long story short, the city fell into a sort of a civil war, and people mostly wiped themselves out. And it left the city in ruin with a lot of these splicers uh, no longer quite human. The drug basically turned them into horrific, warped, mutated monsters, and they're wandering around the city. And even worse, there's still worse things in the city. Uh, Creatures that were originally invented to do jobs for the leader of the city, like warriors and horrible monsters that have crazy kind of abilities, like teleportation and can fire energy bolts and super strong and all that stuff. So basically, as a player of the game, you find yourself in in the city, and it's your job as a player to go through the city, trying to avoid all these monsters and trying to find out, trying to learn exactly what happened in this city. How did such a uh, marvel of human-made paradise fell to ruin? And so, like I said, there's a lot of houses you got to go into, monsters you got to avoid, diaries and computer disks that you got to find and then explore. It's like I said, it's not very complicated overall, but there's a lot of materials in there, a lot of tiny little stories uh, that sort of allow you to puzzle together in the end, like uh, who was who were major players and who were the politicians that uh, caused the city to fall apart and all that stuff. So back to monsters. One of the monster type that you will encounter throughout the game is a female monster called LadySmith Splicer. Like I said, splicers is a general term for these monsters that used to be human, and because of the drug they've been using on themselves, they have mutated and they are no longer, strictly speaking, quite human. And Lady Smith Splicer is one of these creatures that former socialite, former housewife, mother of three, but because of the drug she's been abusing, she is turning into a horrific looking monster that walks around attacking you when you least expect it. This action figure was made by NECA at around 2010, so definitely not a new figure. And in fact, she was made at around the time, but you can say before NECA discovered how to make action figures that have good articulation. So she doesn't have a lot of joints, but what she has can be put to some, relatively speaking, creative uses. She's not very big. She's about 6 inches tall, I guess, and very slender and very light. She's on the outset, she's built like most of your regular female uh, female action figures. But once you start paying attention to what she is, what she looks like, this is one of those monstrous, ugly, horrific characters that just will make you kind of either want to put her down and never look at her again, or you keep looking at her and keep finding new horrifying details. I don't think I will be able to do her justice because a lot of this is coloration and visual, so I won't be able to describe it to all that well. But I will do my best to highlight some of the more scary aspect of this character. First, let's look at her uh, very distorted face. Her face has been so ravaged by the drug she's been using that she no longer has a nose. Her nose is nothing but a flap that lay across the middle of her face, and you can see that she's missing a lot of her teeth. So her teeth has been falling out, and her whole visage is just really, really distorted and warped. Like this is hardly even what you would call a woman anymore. When you first encounter this monster in the game, in the first Bioshock game, I remember she being blonde, but this version, which is what she looked like in Bioshock 2, it's brunette. So has she always been a brunette and just dye her hair? And now that the city has fallen, that she no longer have access to hair dye, or was she really a blonde? That and then the drug did something to her hair. I don't really know. Maybe some of you who know the truth can enlighten me on this one. From the neck down, she's wearing a dress that is all tattered and dirty and torn and falling apart. And this style of dress, I think, is from 1950, so it definitely has that like very retro, vintage look to it. If you take a look at her right hip, you can see that the dress is torn open there, and you can see her very old-fashioned underwear and like I guess bloomers underneath. Looking at the left side of her stomach, you can see the dress is also torn open there. You can see her saggy, veiny guts just spilling out the side. I mean, yeah, that's disgusting, uh, disturbing view right there. Comparing to the rest of her, her right arm does look relatively normal. I mean, she's got some skinny arms there, but yeah, she's been living in a fallen city for a long time, probably finding very little food. So it's understandable why her arm is that skinny. However, if we look at her left arm, that is a completely different story. On her left arm, there's a massive, gross looking tumor that just bulges her forearm up to like 3 times its normal size. Yeah, talk about lumpy. That's lumpy right there. She has somehow lost the shoe on her right foot, and if we follow her leg down, you will see that her right foot has completely mutated. It no longer even looks like a human foot. It now looks like the hoof of some kind of animal. There's a tiny little claw growing out of the back of her leg, her right leg, and because of the weird shape that foot is in, it's incredibly hard to get her to stand. This is why I have to rig up a homemade stand for her because she actually came with a stand for her, like in the package, but honestly, the stand she came with didn't do anything to keep her stable. So I made a new stand for her out of the metal lid. Of, I can't remember where I got the lid from, but it's a lot more useful to keep her standing. Comparing to her right leg, her left one looked relatively more normal. However, you can see that there's a strange tentacle growing down her left shin. So what's going on there? Like, I don't even want to think about that. Actually, if we want to talk about things that I don't want to talk about, you can actually look up her dress, and I'm not going to show it here because it's not nice. It's not pleasant. Okay, I'm not even talking about it being sexual or erotic. What you can see under her dress is very disturbing. Let's just put it this way. She's growing things that shouldn't even appear on a human body, uh, down between her legs. That's as delicately as I can put it. If you have this figure, then you know what I'm talking about. If you don't have this figure, then it's probably something that you don't really want to know. As far as articulations go, like I mentioned, this seemed to have been made back before NECA knew anything about putting use for articulation on action figures. However, she does have some useful points. Her neck allow her to move her head, especially she can tilt her head down really far. She has a ball jointed waist, so she can lean in different directions. Her shoulders are ball jointed, so she can swing her arm in all kind of wild poses. However, the most annoying part about this figure is actually her elbows, because the elbows, at least on my figure, I don't know about others, but on my figure, anytime you move her elbow joint, the forearm fall off, and it's not like they're broken. It's just like they are not assembled tight enough. So anytime you move her elbow, the arm tend to pop out, and you have to snap them back in. Very, very weird. One of the more unique aspect of these monsters that are called splicers in Bioshock games is that they are not really your typical zombie monsters like in a lot of other horror games. You have people turn into monsters and they want to eat you, they want to tear you apart with their fingernails, they want to bite your head off and stuff like that. For the most part, these splicers, even though they look like they're mutating, they're warping, they're growing different weird body parts, they are decaying, they still, for the most part, act like human. Like the LadySmith Splicer, when you encounter her in the game, she'll trash talk you. She's make a lot of really racist, bigotry comments, and then she either try to hit you with a, a blunt weapon or she'll try to shoot you with a gun. So even though she decaying and disintegrating and starting to look more like a monster than a woman. She's not going to try to bite your head off or anything like that. She more or less act like just a crazy woman, which I guess if you go from a very good-looking socialite, highly respected housewife of in the community to something that look like this, I can imagine you go a little bit insane too. She does come with a couple of interesting accessories. Like I said, she comes with a little stand for her foot, but that I don't even know where that went because it wasn't very useful to keeping her upright. So yeah, it's there, but it's not useful. But she also comes with a little old ceramic rabbit mask, bunny mask, that when she was a normal woman, she used to wear to dinner parties. And now it's like her, it's falling apart and cracked and battered looking. Unfortunately, just like the stand she came with, the mask is something that looked good on paper, but lousily executed. It's very difficult to get it to stay on her head. So that's why I resort to getting it to stay there with a twist tie that just wrap the twist tie around the back of her head, and so the mask can stay on. Otherwise, every time I try to put her away on the shelf, the mask would end up falling off, and I would have to try to find it on the floor and put it back on her face. It was so frustrating. I heard some people have better luck getting it on her head, but for me, it would never stay on her head. This is one of those instances where rather than giving her a mask that is so fiddly to try to get on her face, it would be better if NECA would just give us a second alternate head with the mask already glued to it. This way we can choose if we want her displayed with the mask or without the mask without having to worry about the mask falling off all the time. Other than the mask and the stand, Lady Smith Splicer also comes with two weapons. First, there's this rolling pin that she can use to bash your head in with. Although I don't think she actually ever used it in the game, but she used to be a housewife. I guess this is a uh, logical uh, item she would use as a weapon. Now, I did again have to wrap twist tied around it because it was simply too small for her to be able to hold properly without it always falling out of her grasp. Another very annoying thing. Actually, a lot of things about this figure with the arms constantly falling off and the stand and the mask not working properly and the rolling pin that she can't even hold properly. It's quite aggravating. Like they're giving you these accessories that are good, but they don't work. At least she does come with one weapon that does uh, work fine for her. The Lady Smith Splicer comes with this really cool looking old fashioned machine gun, aka a Tommy gun, that you see a lot of gangster movies. She does use something like this in the game. Like I said, rather than trying to tear you off your face off and eat you like a zombie. She actually chases you, yell at you, and try to shoot you like a very pissed off woman. So it's kind of interesting. I mean, in this game, we are dealing with monsters that act like, well, I mean, like crazy criminal druggies that we know in real life. In the end, uh, she is an old figure and definitely a figure that has a lot of flaws to her, but she is a very interesting figure. Like I said, she is very monstrous, very disturbing, and just on that alone is quite rare because most of the time when we see female action figures, they are sexy, beautiful, fit, muscular, buxom, all kind of like very teenage dream, wet dream kind of design. We very rarely see a bad looking female character, never mind outright horrifying, mutating uh, female character like this. So just the basing on she's a female, but there's nothing sexy or cute about her. This is quite an interesting figure. And on top of that, like I said, she used to be a housewife before everything fell apart around her. So she definitely fulfills our requirement for a housewife today and our requirement for having a scary looking action figure for Halloween. Before we call it a night, I want to quickly mention this. Today has been quite a melancholy day for me because today is the birthday of my dearly departed friend James, whom left this world just over a month ago. Actually, yeah, just over a month. Um, James would have been 40 years old today. He was healthy, he was strong, he was full of dreams and promises, but he left this world prematurely and without any uh, premonition or forewarning. I'm still very sad about him. Today, I did a little video. I actually did a 5 kilometer run on the treadmill in memory of him, and because that's the way, the kind of training he did with me. A lot of cardio, a lot of hard work. He was a trooper, one of the best students I ever taught. There's a short video from that clip that you guys can see on this channel. Please join me in wishing James happy birthday wherever you are. Give that video a watch and a like. Uh, and always remember, it is good to have long-term plan, but your short-term plan should always include being nice to yourself, having fun, and be happy because you never know if you are going to wake up tomorrow. And on that depressing note, I will bid you farewell and I will see you guys again tomorrow on uh, Fitness Friday with Johnny Tiger.